Hello everyone, this is James Shore with another test-driven development video. Today is May 27th. I'm picking up right where I left off. We had just finished getting the spike done where we can make a warning icon appear and disappear inside of the text field, and it came out so beautifully. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. There may be a look and feel problem for other browsers, and if I was creating real software that I was planning to ship to people, I might make a note to test that. I'm going to go ahead and make a note to test that, but I don't know if I'll ever get to it. Everything, when you're doing 15-minute videos, even a simple, small amount of work that takes an hour is four videos. So there's some things that I'm not going to worry about as much as I would in a real software development environment. Although I'm trying to make this pretty real, there are limits. But let's look at does the warning icon work properly in all look and feels that we use. So $text field. Because the issue here is that the icon is showing up really beautifully overlaying onto this text field. But other ways that I had done it, it showed up really far to the right and didn't overlay properly with that blue border. So on a different OS, like if we're running it on Windows, for example, will there be different metrics? Will it show up differently? That's something that we'd need to test. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. I think it would be something I'd probably prioritize higher if my goal was to ship to Windows users. But since my real goal here is to ship to myself, I don't think I'm going to make it as big of a priority. The question of when to deal with cross-platform issues is always a big one, because it does take a lot of time and energy, but if you put it off too long, which prevents you from exploring some of the fundamental architectural questions you need to explore, but it is itself a fundamental architectural question, so if you put it off too long, you end up feeling the pain from that. So, and honestly, you don't really want to have to deal with cross-platform issues. You know what they say about Java, write once, test everywhere. Well, you just can't get away with that in any language. If you're doing cross-platform, you got to test cross-platform. Anyway, moving on. So what we need to do is we need to get this knowledge that we've gained from doing this spike. Now we need to write tests around it. And this is the big reason I do spikes, because writing a test for something, doing test-driven development, honestly, it requires that you know how to do what you're trying to do, because test-driven development is a meta level of thinking. You're thinking about what code you want to write to force the code you want to be written. And if you don't know how to write I don't know if this makes sense. If you don't know how to write the code, if you don't know how to program something, test-driven development is not going to teach you how to program it. It's actually going to be it's going to be harder to figure out how to program it. And that's why spikes are important. You do a spike when you don't know how to program something so that you don't have to think about two things at once. Test-driven development, you're thinking really hard about how can I make this tested, and how can I keep the design clean, and how can I have beautiful code. That's a hard problem. If you combine that hard problem with the hard problem of how do I program this in the first place, it's too much for me anyway. I can't do it. So when I have a hard problem that I don't know how to solve, like I did here, then I solve it without test-driven development, and then I refer to that code and try to figure out how to make it beautiful and testable. So if you've ever had trouble with TDD, particularly if you're working a lot in a legacy system where you don't know the code, or an environment where you don't know the system very well, if you struggle in that environment, it may be that you need to spend more time learning how to program in that environment using spikes, and then apply TDD after each spike, as I do a lot in these videos, because there's a lot of stuff I don't remember or never knew how to do in Java. Okay, well, enough lecture. Let's see, icon and text field. There is our code, our example. Now let's go into $text field and $text field. So we know what we want to do. We want to do all this stuff. But but we need to test it. And I am really not sure how to do that. I think I wanted to start out here. Now the behavior I want is simply that we've got the text field and an icon overlapping. I suppose I could write a test to assert on that behavior by looking at the fundamental metrics, like what's the x, y coordinates of each component and so forth. That would be one way to test this. Another way to test it would be to assert on I'm using a layout, overlay layout. That's a lower quality test because it's just testing the implementation. It's not testing the underlying behavior. But it's a lot easier in this case. So I think I'm not thrilled with that approach, but I think that's the approach I'm going to use because going in and looking at the underlying metrics, that's very fragile. It's going to break on Windows. It's going to work on the Mac, but if, for example, if I upgrade to a new version of the OS and they change the way their widgets work, then the test would break. So I've got a choice between having something fragile and very complex versus something that's not so fragile but very implementation specific. I hate writing tests that just reflect the implementation, which is why I avoid a lot of mock objects, is because it's really easy when you're writing mock objects to devolve into just saying, I wrote this exact line of code. Now, there are people out there who say that's an incorrect use of mock objects, but I find that when I use mock objects, that's how I end up writing the code, and I don't like that, so I stay away from that style of development. Not to say I couldn't learn a better way of using mock objects, but I'm pretty happy with the way I do it, so I've never bothered learning a better way of doing mock objects. So anyway, I guess I'm talking a lot in this video because I don't know what to do next. Let's see. Let's assert that the layout includes text field, includes a warning icon. Or just let's test the layout. We'll just start there. And I think we've done this once before. I remember not being thrilled with the way we did this before either, but sometimes this is all I can think of. So yeah, should lay out properly. So this is basically what I did before. I'm going to go ahead and copy this pattern. Again, I'm not thrilled with it, but actually, rather than asserting on the layout to begin with, let's assert that we have, let's start out by asserting we have one component and that we have a text field and because we're going to have to change this text field over to a panel, so that's going to the internal implementation over to a panel, so that's going to probably cause things to break to begin with. In fact, will this test even pass? Yeah, it doesn't contain any components because it's not a container. Let's actually start out by refactoring refactoring Tyler's text field to be a panel rather than a text field. That's going to take a bit of work and could potentially, yeah, that's actually causing some compile failures. But not as bad as I feared. I'm going to go ahead and try that. So we're going to need a JText field and we're going to need to add that to the panel. I'm not going to worry about layout or anything just yet. Yeah, I think the things we've done to make $text field isolated are going to really pay off here. However, we do have some tests that are going to be unhappy. Well, we need a get text. Do we need a get text? Get dollars is really what we need here. So our tests want a get text and a set text. Yeah, our tests want a get text and a set text. I think that would be appropriate to add. But in order to do that, I need to write some tests to get those fields in. So I'm going to change this back. I know that's very wonky code. I'm just doing it so that I can have a green bar. So I can then come in here and say text reflects dollar amount. So we want to get and set text. So I want to be able to say field.setText foo, and then assert equals foo with field.getText. And get and set arbitrary text. That should pass because that's built in. But now when I come into here and change this back, it should fail. And I'll go ahead and write some code. So get text is going to return a string. Oh, that should be a void. And this should fail not only the test I just wrote, but a bunch of the other tests. Yeah, the expected foo wasn't all perfect. So I should be able to just forward this on to like that. Yeah, there we go. This is kind of fun. This is going to be really cool. I think we're getting very close to being done with this $text field. That's all the time we have for this episode, so thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.